Exactly. And
And
success in
then,
relationship. Yeah. That
and I'm
forever
sure there's
love.
the forever love. Now, I'm sure we will both agree that sometimes you could do everything in the book and still on the other side, right? It takes two. If
Absolutely.
that person is not, connected to that, because you may get this whole perfect picture up front, only to find out, I'm sure we both have heard stories where 6 years later something totally derailed it. Would
Mhm.
you? Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
But
that's where when you start it off right, when I say starting it off right, like starting it off in balance, right, where you're allowing him to give to you or to show his interest in you, and of course you're also giving to him and showing your interest in him. I'm not saying that that part's not there, but when you
yes.
start out in balance, and I work with my clients as they're starting and to stay in that balance, but that never goes away because you could
Hmm.
be with someone for 5 years, you could be with someone for 10 years. You still want to keep maintaining that balance. You still don't want to be the one who's, controlling and making it work and making you stick together. It still has to be
Hmm.
both. So that's why when you start off with that balance, it's easier to maintain it and to know to watch for it because for myself, like I had said, I started off, really pursuing, right? So after I learned these tools, now I have a new boyfriend and it's completely different with him, but I'm still me. So I still have to watch out for those same tendencies that I had to kind of want to like make things stick together or to pursue him or to do more and needing to like lean back and allow him to show me what he wants. So it never goes away. We're still alive. We're still here. We're still
Yes.
human. It's just human.
And it's great that you mentioned, right, now that you're adding all of the different your tools into play, that you're literally seeing the results of what it is that you've learned from past lessons. Any tips or advice that you can share with us as to how to ensure a great connection right from the beginning?
Well, one of the tools that I teach, which is basically, we've kind of already talked about it, but it does have a name called lean back. So,
Mm.
like we kind of touched on it before, but a really, really common dynamic is to kind of, let's say that you're maybe in early dating. This actually happened to a client of mine this week. So she'd been dating this guy for 4 or 5 weeks, and for whatever reason, his communication kind of dropped from where it
Mm.
had been. Not that he'd like disappeared, but he wasn't texting as much, he wasn't calling as much, he wasn't, pursuing. That's what I mean by pursuing. He wasn't pursuing her as much. What happened, which is the same thing that happens for all of us as women, is she got anxious, she got scared. So she started noticing like all these she wanted to like create drama to like bring him towards her. She wanted to kind of accuse him or like, hey, how come you haven't been like contacting me as much? So but then she kind of remembered because of the work that we'd done together. She's like, wait a minute, lean back. So what that meant was not blaming him because he maybe just
Mhm.
wasn't texting as much. I mean, this wasn't like he had completely disappeared. I should clarify that. It was just kind of less. So she
Mhm.
she leaned back and she's like, "Wait a minute, let me just take a breath here. He's not done anything wrong. He's just a little less attentive. He's got something going on. I don't know what it is, but he kind of needs to figure that out. I need to turn to myself, again, lean back, turn to myself, look at this anxiety and look at maybe some of the thoughts that I'm having. So that's interesting. I'm kind of like wanting to blame him or I'm wanting to create this drama to bring him towards me. So even just
Mm.
thinking about those things, journaling about those things, maybe she went and talked to some friends and did some other things, whatever kind of things you want to think of for self-care, not in a mad huff, like what, he's not doing this, fine, I'm going to go over here and get a pedicure. Not like that, but a more curious, why am I thinking this?
Mhm.
Why am I feeling this? So this gave space then for him to come back to her. And then she wasn't mad. She wasn't angry at him because she had just been taking care of herself, filling up her own cup, leaning back.
Mhm.
That's what the tool is called. So then when he came back, she's like, "Oh, hey, how are you doing?" And she was just
Mm-hmm.
welcoming and open. It wasn't a problem. And because what happens when we go into that anxiety and we lean forward is we end up creating a problem. We end up
Yeah.
creating a drama. We end up creating that. And so just by kind of taking a breath and leaning back, the whole thing really wasn't that big of a deal. It was just
Mm.
him needing a little bit of space. He had some stuff going on and needed to kind of deal with that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. It's
So
it's
that's the tool.
it's
Lean
not
back.
like there were. Yeah. It's interesting how you mentioned the word tendencies. So we have to pay attention to our tendencies,
Mhm.
or sometimes trauma.
Yeah.
Tendencies or trauma are from the past, and then we're bringing it into the next relationship.
Hmm.
So that was very helpful for her to pay attention to that and hold that in place and allow it to nurture itself, or have him come and pursue, versus she's technically really what she was doing is like pursuing it. If she didn't see
Right.
that, if the gap started opening, she was trying to fill it up with, like you said, drama or something,
But what
or
she the way that kind of clued her into this is how she was feeling. So she started
hmm
noticing like I don't like myself right now. I don't like these thoughts that I'm having and this feeling and this graspiness and like I'm wanting to create drama. Like I don't like drama. And so she was noticing these things about herself. So when she turned to herself and did some journaling, did some thinking, she just kind of relaxed. Then she was liking where herself was, and then when he came back, then she was not feeling anxious, not feeling graspy and needy, and it could just flow.
and it's interesting because I know we were talking before before we started taping about your journal. You have a Forever Love journal.
I love journaling, and I'm always doing a lot of journaling. I love journaling, so I think it is really important, so that we can look at what are our motivations, what are our feelings, what are our thoughts.
Especially at times like this, right? While she was waiting, she was journaling. That was interesting.
Exactly. And I actually have some specific journal prompts that I suggest for my clients when dating. And that also
Mm,
ties into kind of the red flags so that we don't conveniently ignore, or I call them sometimes yellow flags when they're like, this might be a little off. And sometimes we can conveniently forget those, but they kind of add up. And so when you
mm.
journal, you're like, I noticed this thing happened. I wonder about that. And then you have it written down. You can trust yourself more.
And go from there.
Yeah.
I love it. Any last advice that you can share with us in regards
Well,
to
I would love to
dating,
share a free
loving,
resource
relationship?
that I have for women about meeting men, because if you're interested in this whole kind of idea of abundance of men and actually going through the process of dating, and when you have more men around you, also that helps lower that anxiety that we've been talking
Mm.
about through this whole call. So I do have a free resource to offer over at lovecoachjerica.com, and it's basically about how to take those first steps in that positive way. So I'd love to offer that to everyone.
And so you say your website is lovecoachjerica.com.
Lovecoachjerica.com.
Beautiful. I love it. And so in general, Jerica, how do you serve others?
Well, I have a program called 90 Days to Forever Love, and I walk with my clients through this whole process of dating, through am I pursuing him? Is he pursuing me? Should I text him back? Should I not? And I work one on one with my clients over a period of 90 days. And so the idea is to get into that abundance, to be willing to meet different men, get to know different men, talk to them, see who they are, get to know them, see who you vibe with, who you don't, what does he do, what does this other man do, and in that 90 days to find a
Mm,
serious contender for that authentic connected relationship that we've been talking about.
I
And
love it.
along that journey of 90 days too, self it's so much of a journey into yourself and learning who you
Mm.
are, what are your feelings, what is this anxiety all about, all kinds of things come up.
So if you could share one thing with your younger self, what would
Oh,
it be?
there is another way, and
Hmm.
you don't have to do everything.
That's key. And having going like being able to go through that 90-day journey with you, I can see where, I mean, that is so important because the 90 days can literally give you that forever love with someone for 90 years.
Oh,
Isn't that
absolutely.
worth that is so worth it. I mean, we
Hmm.
may look at it, some of us may look at, oh gosh, that's a long time. But if we can't give ourselves 90 days to really do a self-discovery of who we are, who we should love or how we love or how we should be loved, then I don't know what to say for the 90 years of
Exactly.
trauma.
It goes back to what we've talked about, that on the
Yeah.
one hand, we want this amazing, connected, authentic relationship and bond
Mhm.
forever for that 90 years. But we kind of, I guess, from movies, we kind of expect to just happen with magical fairy dust.
Mm.
And so, what
Magical
I'm
fairy
all
dust.
about is let's take a journey inside you, and then as you get to know him, different triggers will happen, and you'll get to know yourself. A lot of it is a journey of yourself, a journey into you, and then it's how you connect with that other person.
Right. And
Yeah.
love in that person. Well, thank you, Jerica. This has been fantastic. I'm sure there's been a lot of golden nuggets that, a lot of us are grabbing from. And really, it comes down to loving yourself before you can love anyone else and paying attention, right? Paying attention to those
Uh,
assessing yourself of how you love.
exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me, Carla. This was a really great conversation, and I learned a few things myself. So I hope that I can provide some inspiration out there that it is possible. There is another way to be, and you don't have to do all the work.
I love it. And so, thank you again. Thank you, Jerica.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, thank you. You're so you were this was a treat for both myself and like Jerica mentioned, we learned so much even with each other. Sometimes just having these conversations, being on your inspired journey is really a way to elevate not only about learning about others, but even about yourself. And
Mhm.
so the message that I got from Jerica today was be a flower. A lot of times we want to be the bee and jump from flower to flower all over the place and do the pursuing. Sometimes focus on you. Work on your aroma that you smell so good that they come your way. With that, I'm Carla Andrews. I wish you well.